Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, my friends. Welcome for the first video in 2022. It's a cold day in January, but the sun is shining. Well, my name is Dieter Van Schura, and I'm the owner of a little family company. And we've sold art prints, mainly Japanese art prints, in online auctions since 2001. In this first video in 2022, I want to present you a bunch of contemporary art prints from the current auction, which has the number 1714. And all these prints that I introduce in this video, they have been consigned directly by the artists, not by a dealer, not by a collector. And I first want to explain something. How do we fix, together with the artist, of course, the reserve in order to avoid a misunderstanding? Because some of you in our auctions, you may be used that you can bid on prints, on items that have a minimum bid, a so-called reserve, which is far below the adequate gallery prices. For these contemporary artist prints, artists who cooperate directly with us, this would not work, because these are not unknown artists, but very renowned artists who also cooperate with galleries, plush galleries, galleries in New York, in Tokyo, and some also sell from their own website, and therefore offering it much below would not work. I mean, the artists would ruin their cooperation with the galleries and then their own market prices. So we fix the reserves basically on the level of what is called retail prices. If you use our early bird bonus, you can get them a little bit cheaper. And we have increments. Sometimes the increments don't fit precisely. And then we always take the lower increment. So you can get it a little bit below a market price. But when you counterbid something to double the original reserve, please assume then you may buy more expensive than compared from the artist's website or from a gallery. Well, so much to avoid understanding and to avoid that you start bashing me after auction end. I want to make a quick walkthrough now through roughly 20-25 prints. So let's not lose any time. And let's start with the first one. The first one, where's that damned mouse? Yeah, it's by Tim Southall. These artists that we now present to you are not necessarily Japanese artists. Well, some from the UK, some from the US. They may have a little bit of a Japanese background, but not necessarily as you may have been used by our auction since 2001, Japanese artists. And Tim Southall is from the UK, lives in Spain, and this is a lovely silk screen. He made this after observing his neighbors who walks his dog every morning. Tim Southall is an internationally recognized artist, by the way. Next one, by Mio Asahi. And she makes fantastic fantasy prints, aqua tint technique, and she creates it all out of her fantasy. Quite incredible. And always a strong woman riding a monster, either a sea monster or in this case a bird monster flying through the air. Our next artist is Ikumi Okada from Japan, and she makes very dreamy prints. I love them. And she uses the traditional woodblock print, which we can see pretty well in the next one when you look there, yeah? Especially here you can, if you're recognized with the printmaking techniques, you can recognize how she perfectly integrates the grain of the wood into the image. And that's a very high art. Next one, Masahiko Honjo. He's very well known in Japan. He took part in the most recent exhibition of the College Women Association of Japan. That's the most important print show in Japan, which takes place every year in Tokyo. Not yet that known outside of Japan, but I hope that will change now also by helping a little bit with artelino. Next print by Emiko Aida. Emiko Aida, a Japanese printmaker who has lived, I think, at least for 2 decades in London. And the subject of her prints is this controversy between 2 cultures. Well, the old traditional Japanese culture and the modernized Western Japan, this megalopolis of Tokyo that you see there in the background. And here a guy with a traditional Japanese jacket. Also the next one, rather satirical. It shows that the title is The Tamed Kong, yeah? It shows King Kong with a suitcase. He represents one of these typical office employees who travel 2 hours on a commuter train to work in Tokyo, and late in the evening they go home again, and yeah, he doesn't look very happy. It's the same again, this controversy, old Japan against the westernized the civilization that is dominant in today's Japan. Well, and this is completely different by Nick Tucker. Nick Tucker, our first artist from New Zealand. This, however, is not a New Zealand mountain. This shows Mount Everest, but it has a connection with New Zealand because the first 2 people who conquered in 1954 the summit, one was Edmund Hillary, and the second one, his Nepalese friend. I don't remember the name now, sorry. I should actually have mentioned him. Well, it shows Mount Everest, yeah. Awesome. And she works in woodcut printmaking technique. So classical moku hanga. This is by Jane Daniel. I like Jane Daniel. By the way, her prints are a real by, I would even say a steal, yeah? Very inexpensive and fantastic, also kind of fantasy prints. And I like these gradations of the colors she has here. Look from bottom up from a dark kind of turquoise green to blue. And also she creates these subjects all out of her fantasy. Next one, Alexander Buckle. Alexander Buckle works on a rather high-level linocut technique, and this is a subject from the UK. She's a UK printmaker. She likes to walk her dog in her rural environment, and then she takes photographs, and at home she creates these wonderful art prints. Next one, Lenita Shimizu, a US printmaker, and she had spent, I think, 3 years in Japan, and her teachers were Tokoriki Tomikichiro and Yoshisuke Funasaka, who works mostly abstract. And you can recognize this influence here a little bit, pretty much. I'll leave that up to you. I like her compositions, and I like the combinations of colors and texture. And this is something certainly that she'll learn from from her masters in Japan during 3 years. Imagine that. Next one, also by Lenita Shimizu. This is a mountain in Hawaii, she writes. And here by Laura Boswell. Laura Boswell, leading UK printmaker, also with a training in Japan. And this is a pure woodblock print. You can say in mokuhanga, in modern Japanese style. It's, by the way, it's the last or one of very few copies from a small edition. So this is a pretty good chance, and I like these pale colors. Paul Binney, the star among today's modern Japanese printmakers working in mokuhanga. Mokuhanga is just another word for woodblock printmaking. Paul didn't give any explanation about this print, or at least I don't know any. The title is Morning Tears. It's from a series, and we have a second one by Paul. This shows the famous Torii at Miyajima, and this is an early print by Paul. Also, Paul spent 6 years, or nearly 6 years, in Japan learning the Japanese way of printmaking, and I think this one he created it while he was still in Japan, but don't bash me, I may be wrong. Not so important. Well, Osamu Sugiyama has cooperated with us for at least 15 years, and he's one of our best sellers, and we've sold hundreds of prints for him. He's specialized on mountain views, and this shows the dried Zinnen. I don't know the English word. It's in the German part of southern Tyrol, Italy, and famous, beautiful mountain landscape, by the way. It's not so far away from the place where I live. And this now shows the Japanese mountain. It's Mount Yakedake in fall. Osamu Sugiyama, a pupil of the famous Shinhanga artist Toshi Yoshida. And also our next artist, Ryuuje Okamoto. He was a pupil of Toshi Yoshida. Toshi Yoshida died in the 1990s, unfortunately. And he's famous among collectors of the so-called Shinhanga art movement. And Toshi Yoshida, he once wrote a letter in which he said, Ryuuje Okamoto is unique. Yeah? I want the world to know that. He was also the right-hand student of Toshi Yoshida, and his technique is superb. We have currently 3 prints by Ryuuje Okamoto. That one has a beautiful title, Love Me, Love Me. Version B, there was a version A and a version B. And the third one from a large series by Ryuuje Okamoto called First Love, where he portrays young women, young girls who are for the first time in love. Next one, goodie, an oldie but goodie. Silk Screens by Hideaki Kato from Kyoto. I'm often asked, are these photographs? They are both. The base is a photograph, and then Hideaki Kato works on that in some complicated way, which I don't want to explain now, maybe cannot even explain it myself. I'm not a printmaker. But they are beautiful. And this shows an old inn, now a restaurant, somewhere in the surroundings of Kyoto. And now an artist who, I think he has never been in Japan, doesn't have anything to do with Japan, Stephen McMillan. He lives and works in the state of Washington. And Steve likes hiking. Most of his prints show nature prints from the surroundings of his hikes in California or in Washington. But this is actually from a trip by Stephen in Venice. Most of you will recognize it in Canale Grande, the Great Canal, or whatever it is called in English. And Stephen works in aquatint technique. And also there you could think, hey, this is a photograph. No, it's not. And it's even handmade what he does. Of course, the origin is a photograph that he takes. He's, by the way, a pretty good photographer. The next one is a typical nature print by him. Yeah, this one, October Colors. And he's, by the way, he now works with us for about half a year, and he's already one of our best sellers, by the way. And I think this is the last one, Yuji Hiratsuka, oldie but goodie. Yuji is was born in Japan. When he was a young man, he moved to the US, and today he's a professor of printmaking at the Oregon State University in Portland. Yeah, it's in Portland. He has a very specific style, a very specific technique, and it's a mixture of etching and shin-collé, and it doesn't really fit into any of, let's say, the major art movements. Yeah, his prints are rather sophistical, witty. Also, take a look at the titles: oval, floral, sentimental. He leaves it up to the viewer to make his story. Well, this was the last one, yeah, from the current auction. 1,714, and it's the first auction in January, and it will end January 9, 2021. And a specific little request for you. Well, if you like that we show more and more contemporary printmakers, not only traditional Japanese printmakers working in woodblock technique, but also people like Yuji Hiratsuka working in shin-collé, or Steve McMillan, well, then support these artists with your bids, because only if we can sell them and can sell them well, they will cooperate with us, and then I will be able to show new artists, maybe not every week, but every month. Well, so much for today. Thank you for watching, and please take care of yourself.